What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 95 of the Overview. I'm ChanManV, and of course, FishStix is here. ZP is not here tonight, unfortunately. He's busy contendering somewhere. But instead, we've got Yiska joining us for the first time. What's up, buddy?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for staying up, man. It's like 4 o'clock or something over there. So
yeah, this
dedication.
Yeah, dedication. Yeah, exactly. So I really appreciate you joining us, and I've been meaning to ask you for a long time too. So I'm glad we finally figured out time. But it's been a while, guys. I know it's been like 3 weeks, I think, since we've done a show, and a lot has happened in 3 weeks. So I think we're trying to pick just the highlights from the last 3 weeks, and it's a mixture of game stuff with Retribution, a little bit of drama, a lot of drama, and then of course we've got some Overwatch in there, Chris, somewhere. Yeah, there's some Overwatch in there somewhere. You know, actual matches in there. But you got any questions? Go ahead and tweet those tonight. We're not gonna do emails because we just, again, it's been a while. So go ahead and tweet those to the Overview GG, and we will ask them. Maybe we'll take them in Twitch chat too. Like depending on how things go here, but. I wanted to start off with just the event, given that we haven't talked about the event, Retribution. You guys enjoying like the PvE and just all the new skins, all that good stuff? Ben?
Chris, for once, I've been good and actually played the special event. Usually I'm like,
wow.
I don't even, like, I just want to play ranked all the time, but
Exactly.
I've actually played Retribution. Okay. And I gotta say, it just makes you think there could be an Overwatch single player campaign. I mean, you can wrap the story in there.
Yeah,
it's fun to play the team-based, like class-based gameplay against, computer-controlled enemies. Mm-hmm. The gameplay is pretty fun. It looks beautiful. I'm sure it must be really difficult for them to create, these super detailed, gorgeous maps and everything for each of these. So the development time is probably pretty tough, and they actually reuse those same assets for maps in the game. So it makes sense that they roll it out progressively along with the game. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's just like, we could have an Overwatch single player. Like, this proves it to me. It was good enough. It was on that bar quality, I thought.
Yeah. Yiska, what about you, man? Did you get a chance to play it?
I mean, usually I'm not too much into these events. I played a little bit just to check it out and see basically what kind
so
of characters.
Hardcore, man. Like, why do I even bother having this segment? I'm like, but so did you actually play it all though? Like, get it like.
Yeah, I played like a round or two, and I think I've finished 2. But yeah, I think it was generally pretty fun. And if they get to reuse the assets, also as we've seen with that bug in ranked play, I suppose, then I think it's fine. Like, definitely everything that brings more active players back, and then I mean, to be sort of self-serving, to bring them back into the game, and then also interact with Overwatch League content. Obviously, always a bonus for me.
Yeah. I mean, your point, Ben, about it being another game. Like, I've definitely thought about, definitely be awesome to have more game modes and things like that. But I'm wondering if it should just be like another game, like separate from Overwatch itself. Like, if it's going to be a single player game, or even just some of these custom games, right? Like Lucio Ball is probably not the best example, but those type of games too. I feel like could be like an arcade, right? And just have the full out arcade separately.
We know for a fact that this will never happen, or something huge would have to change for it to happen, because Jeff Kaplan said specifically that they were only going to be limited runs for Retribution, for Uprising, for these types of game modes. Yep. It's only going to be a limited time only. And I guess it makes sense from a marketing perspective. You build some hype, you bring in players who haven't played in a long time. I get it. At the same time, the one part that was lacking, I thought, with Retribution was really the plot reveals. It was like, okay, they're in Venice for some reason. They're talking to some mob boss for some reason.
Yeah.
Okay,
Reaper
so we now know that Blackwatch like does things that Overwatch can't, but like that's it. That was all the plot that we got.
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, they get out. So what happens after that? Like, do they go? Is this the point where they go Talon on? I mean, they're obviously killing Talon here. So at some point, right, they end up going to Talon. So there's that missing piece of the plot. I think that's probably going to play out in the next I don't know, next year. Maybe it's like the next, event during this time, Uprising event or whatever, Retribution or I don't know what is it? What would be the next one? It'd be the I don't know, what would we call the other one?
I mean, it's probably going to be like the Return of Overwatch or something. I don't know.
Return over. It can't be Return Overwatch because they're actually they're going bad, right? They're like the journey to the dark side or something like that, right? For these guys. But my take on the event is that it was really easy. Like at least the easier levels, I felt like I didn't have a problem finishing even I think expert, the one that's second to the top. The top one's still hard. But yeah, generally speaking, I think the last Uprising one was much harder, with how hard it was even to finish in the second to last mode. It took me even 1 or 2 tries the first time I did it. But overall, it's definitely fun. And this one seemed to have a better story though. The Uprising one was just kind of like it was a good way to release Orisa at the time. But other than that, it was just kind of like it's not as interesting as them. Kind of finding out the story about the beginnings of them going to Talon. But okay, well, anyways, that's going to Retribution, guys. I think it's going to be how much longer? I think maybe like another week or 2 of Retribution, and then then we're not going to be able to get those skins again. But one thing that was released tonight that involves at least the map on Retribution is the PTR patch came out. And man, we got some balance changes on here too. Obviously the new map too. And it's time to talk about some balance changes. So let's take a look at this. And we literally were looking at this about 10 minutes ago. So, all right. So we got the new map, which is the whole Venice the setting. So, I guess we'll have to kind of see how that plays out. I guess first off, any of you guys get a chance to play it? Because I haven't seen it. Yeah.
I messed around in it for about 5 minutes right before the show. Mm-hmm. And the one thing that everyone has been talking about, it seems pretty obvious if you've been playing since the early days of even the beta or when the game was first launched until now, you've realized there's this trend where where Blizzard tends to release bigger and bigger and more open maps. So the community, myself included, in general, seems to be craving more maps like King's Row, less maps like, Blizzard World, that's quite open and has a lot of high ground. So when I saw this, I'm like, oh, it's on Venice. It's going to have tight streets, tight corridors. This is potentially the chance for another King's Row-esque map, or at least something closer. Well, we did get closer. It's definitely not a Junkertown or Blizzard World, but it's definitely also not a King's Row, I'd say. It's still much wider, still a lot more high grounds. So I'm still not sure we're going to see anything other than dive comps on it, or that being the dominant strategy. There are certainly points which felt a little bit tighter, but just as a fan, as a player, and as someone that loves watching the game, I just want to see more Reinhardts, more Zaryas, more Roadhogs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
kind of tired of seeing the dive and Widow. I can't believe I'm actually saying that, but Widows at least. It's like I was hoping Widow would be a huge part of the league, which it actually is, and it's still good to have it. But it'd be nice to at least have one map or a couple more maps so we can see a different composition. Yiska, what's your take on what you've seen? Yeah, what's your take on what you've seen?
So I have to admit I haven't looked at the map at all, but
yeah,
from FishStix descriptions, is it? Would you say it's like Route 66 then?
Yeah, it's definitely more on the narrow side out of all the maps, but from what I could see, almost every point has very significant high ground control as well. So yeah, I guess you could say in a way it's similar to Route 66.
Yeah. Maybe mid Dorado at some points too, like the middle of Dorado.
It's not as high as Dorado.
Okay.
It's like high grounds, but like middle high grounds, I guess. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean,
but anyway, we'll see soon when we get to play it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's talk about some balance here. We got Genji deflect. The hitbox size has been reduced. Okay, so I guess having to hit his sword isn't too unreasonable. Instead of bullets just bouncing off of, just this.
I mean, that was just obnoxious, wasn't it? Like,
yeah,
I am bad. I already miss you, but you get to hit me.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not even headshotting you, and you're headshotting me. What the
Yeah.
heck? This is not right. Yeah. So that seems to be a proper adjustment there. Hanzo, we've got a few things here. You know, lots of little changes that they're trying to like switch up with his abilities. So we got Stormbow. The projectile has actually been increased, so it's gone from 85 to 100. The speed of it.
It's basically faster than like a fully charged arrow would be.
Right.
It feels like hit scan almost.
Oh, really? Wow.
It's super fast. It's
Really?
like very, 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 very fast.
So it doesn't have a drop at all. I mean, it still has the drop though, right?
Barely. Like I was testing it out. Like
Really?
it barely has a drop.
Wow.
How does the 3 dots work then? Like, does it still operate the same way?
Crosshair.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. I don't play Hanzo that much, so I still use the default crosshair one. But all right, Sonic Arrow. We've got cooldown decreased from 20 seconds to 12 seconds. I think they just want you to be able to cast it a little bit more and not have it just last forever. So yeah, I like this. I think this is pretty good. It shouldn't be just like Widow's ultimate, where you can just see everything for a good amount of time and the radius is huge. You guys like this?
Yeah, I think it's great. Like, if you think about it, that's one pet peeve that, like, the group of friends I watch with always have is, why do you only bring out the Hanzo Scout on King's Row or on spawns where you get your first angle from spawn? Just take that time, and you already have so much information. It's definitely worth it, especially if you're one of those teams that runs back to spawn in order to counter specific composition. So
Yeah.
I think in general, just that information is so valuable, and to have it like that is a straight buff, right? Like you don't really care as much about the duration. It's really just like, did you spot them? Yes, no. And 80% of the value of just spotting them in that location and also knowing what kind of hero is there is already most of the value. And then it doesn't matter if it's 10 seconds or 6 seconds.
Yeah, makes sense. So, okay, moving on. There's a lunge ability. This is brand new. So press jump while in the air to leap horizontal. So it's like a kind of a weird strafe, like sidestep kind of thing, but a bigger sidestep. Maybe just around corners or something like that. I'm trying to actually figure out exactly how people are going to use it.
I was messing around with this earlier today. It feels a little weird, but it reminded me of something, and I just realized what it reminded me of. It reminds me of double tapping in a direction in Unreal.
Yeah, dude.
It's it's just like a little small hop. It's not super far. Okay. It's not super fast. It's just like a little burst of speed in one direction or the other.
Yeah, so I guess the question is it supposed to be like for evading like rockets or maybe evading a widow shot or like that sort of defensive maneuvering, or is it supposed to be more of an offensive move where you kind of, I don't know, just sidestep and shoot, and headshot somebody?
Well, so you can do a fully charged shot and then hop. So you can imagine scenarios where I feel like this is going to help Hanzo a lot, especially against let's say he's dueling a Widowmaker or something and he wants to peek the corner. You can hop a little bit, so it's going to be harder for that Widowmaker to hit you as you go out from cover. So I think it's more of an offensive move, personally.
Yeah. Also in Hanzo duels, I suppose, if those were to happen, that could be interesting, because usually you win those by, headshotting most of the time, right? Otherwise, the other one would just retreat. And now it's, there's some evasive maneuvers predicting, especially online, if we're being honest, with the netcode. It's more like, okay, can you anticipate where someone would be shooting? And then you can, or when he would start shooting, and then do the little hop in the air. Because if you notice, especially Overwatch League players, like one player that definitely did it at some point was Unbind Space, because they keep jumping and it makes movement very predictable in a sense.
Yeah.
Now, this is the ultimate fix it.
Yeah.
Realistically, it's great.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, next thing is storm arrows. This is the thing that they changed, in terms the most with the features, is that instead of having the scatter arrows now, right, it now is an ability where he can fire like 6 arrows, I think sequentially, right? Like with just super fast. So he can just go bam, 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 bam kind of thing. So 6 arrows that deal reduced damage, but always fire at full power. So you don't have to actually hold it back. It's kind of crazy, actually. It's like tap, 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 tap type of thing. All right, so it's better than Scatter. No question. It's better than Scatter Arrow. So I guess what is it most like in y'all's minds? Like Yiska, like is there another gun that is similar to this or might feel kind of similar to it? Like maybe, I don't know, a soldier just holding the button down or something? I don't even know exactly.
I mean, in general, this should help him close range, right? Because if especially sometimes it's like you headshot someone, but you didn't fully charge or something, and then he has some little tiny itty bitty sliver of health left, and that's actually quite hard for Hanzo to finish. Because if you just mini charge it, it's also very hard to control. So now you have a way to full power solve these situations, but it's not necessarily even bad against tanks. What I will say though is that it probably allows the tank to predict the damage more and get out more easily, because sometimes you could just one-shot specific tanks in silly situations, right? But I don't think that works anymore, and especially against higher skilled opponents, I'm not sure if a tank is going to allow you to really kill him with that ability. But we will see. I'm notoriously bad at predicting what changes will do to meta, so
it's always hard. Yeah, the scatter shot was probably one of the most frustrating abilities in the whole game to get killed by, so I'm cool with pretty much anything taking its place. This one seems cool. It looks cool. The rate of fire is very, very high, so you could imagine a situation where you have like, I don't know, like a Fleta or something just going like bah, 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 bah. Like that could be a really cool, exciting moment. There is a lot of potential for high skill players to use that and get a lot of value. So I'm a huge fan of this change.
Yeah, I wish they would have put the actual damage, what the damage numbers actually are, because like 6 headshots in a row. I mean, forget just firing at a different target. Just fire the same target 6 times. I mean, that should it's kind of like what you were saying, Yiska, right? It could actually potentially do well against tanks. I hope that that's not the case, because that's not supposed to happen. Like Hanzo's not supposed to do well against tanks, so like in a 1v1 type of scenario. But I think it sounds pretty cool though. It definitely sounds like it's going to be pretty fun a lot more fun to play him, or you don't feel quite as helpless whenever you're getting dived at.
I suppose one thing you asked earlier what it's like, right? And does it not feel a little bit like giving the machine gun for Widowmaker that gives Widowmaker at least some way to combat like close range targets? I mean, we even see in Overwatch League that, for instance, KyKy would go for body shots on Tracer and then just finish them off and take close range 1v1s, if not in fact he's just killing them outright. But yeah, that certainly allows a Widow some sort of dual ability against even Tracer.
Yeah. Well, it'll be good, and then I think it'll reward just reward a higher skill cap too. So, or at least it is a higher skill cap, and that's always a good thing, in terms of the characters like Hanzo. All right, Junkrat, we've got a couple things. Frag launcher, the projectile size decreased from 0.3 to 0.2, and then Riptire speed even slower now, 13 to 12. It's probably hard to actually notice, but I think Riptire we're still tweaking. And Ben, I know you're really happy with these changes.
Oh God, I'm so happy. So Junkrat's, I wouldn't say Junkrat is completely like OP or anything, but he feels kind of BSy to play against because the projectile hitbox was so fat and so huge that it really didn't feel like you had to be aiming well to actually hit the shots. Now, I'm not even a TF2 guy. I didn't play much TF2 back in the day, but Demo Man, you had to be accurate as hell. Like those were tiny hitboxes. They were like little guys like this. So when you saw a Demo Man flying through the air and hitting shots, it was incredible. When you see a Junkrat flying through the air and hitting shots, you're like, oh, he just aimed in my general direction, and that was bullshit. So I guess the only concern that I have is like the projectile size hitbox is going from 0.3 to 0.2. That's a massive reduction. Is this too much of a reduction that makes Junkrat not good at this point? That's the only potential problem, but overall I love it. Yeah. And the tire too. I mean, the tire movement speed decrease is less than 10%. It's pretty minimal, but I'm in favor of this one too. Just even at the highest levels, it's so difficult to kill the tire. So I like this one as well.
Yeah. I have to say, like, a Junkrat tire is probably the most unhealthy ultimate in the game.
I was going to ask you that question, so it's good
right.
that you brought it up.
It's completely busted in a sense. The problem is, okay, so if we're saying is Junkrat balanced, well, what do you mean by saying that, right? I'm pretty sure he doesn't have overly high win rates across the board on all maps, but he has ridiculous win rates, at least in pro play, on some maps. For instance, his home map, Junkertown, simply because of the second point where, I mean, sadly at Winston's Lab, we don't have the stats for kills per ultimate at the moment, but it's like you basically always get a kill with tire between A and B, right? It's just like over the sky boxes or whatever, and the speed reduction will also not change this whatsoever.
That's not going to change it at all. Yeah,
it's completely busted. It's like if you use Junkrat tire and the opponent doesn't on Junkertown, it's something ridiculous like 70%, regardless of how many ultimates the opponent uses, because you always get a pick on that map, and you also charge more quickly on Junkrat. So in terms of is Junkrat across the board balanced in the sense that he has a higher win rate, slightly maybe. I would assume that's also true in competitive, just in rank play, but he's just unhealthy in so many ways, right? He's way too strong in certain points, and it really doesn't feel that satisfying to be outplayed, if you want to call it that, by Junkrat.
Yeah,
and it's just unhealthy.
I think that it's going to be kind of a tough thing, because the Junkrat tires make for exciting moments, on the broadcast. And I mean, I personally don't love them, because I feel like so many matches are just dependent upon, just the like you said, the number of rip tires. If a rip tire kills both of your support, you're just completely screwed. It's always going to kill one support. It's like guaranteed to kill at least one support. And it feels like so many matches like just literally come down to that, and it's not, it's not very satisfying after a certain point. But I think for the general audience, the rip tires are considered exciting. I mean, wouldn't you say?
It is an ooh and ah moment.
Yeah, so
just because of the tension, but
yeah, I don't know how you're going to change that. I mean, the supports shouldn't, the only way you could do it is like to have the supports be able to kill it a little easier. But then, those rip tires will be completely worthless and nobody would ever play it again. So it's only been about, maybe 6 to 8 months that Junkrat's been like played again. I mean, for a long time, it wasn't even around, right? So we're kind of at this, I guess, late stages of just, Junkrat, us being tired of Junkrat. But the tire, like, for it to actually just be viable, period, is always going to have this issue. So, you really just have to look at Riptire as a design, period, and whether it's actually a good thing or not. Because like something that's similar is like Diva's Nuke. Diva's Nuke has kind of the same feel, but it's not as consistent, right? And so I don't know. I feel like it's much more palatable because of that. But Riptire, yeah, like you said, it's crazy consistent on maps like Junkertown, and it's just not fun for the players, at least. Lucio, all right, wall riding. God, what do they do here? I feel like there's always something with wall riding with Lucio. It's like you'd think that there'd just be nothing left to change because they've tried so much. But now it looks like you can go around corners without having to leave the wall. I thought they already fixed that at one point, but I guess it's still happening on a lot of...
They made it more forgiving, but have you seen the GIFs of this yet?
No. Is it just crazy?
Like,
the Spider-Man
thing? Circular thing? The circular thing on control point?
Yeah,
on Li Jiang?
Yeah.
There's a Lucio just going...
He's just doing laps on it?
Oh my god, it's so funny looking. So I'm like 90% sure this will not go to live.
Wait, so you don't have to
Yeah.
jump
Ooh.
anymore, basically. You just run like in circles, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think my understanding is because there's usually on one wall you have a timer where when it goes off, you just drop down. But because you can now go from wall to wall, that timer continuously resets, and you can just infinitely. And then also if you speed boost, I mean it's just a speed demon at that point.
Okay, I gotta look for these. I gotta look for these gifts afterwards. That must be hilarious to see, or at least people trying to shoot them. That's gotta be pretty funny. Soundwave no longer consumes ammo. Oh, okay.
I love this one. I mean, it's like relatively subtle. But like I just think Lucio is one of the best designed characters in the game. He's fun to play. He's so impactful. Boop is such a unique ability. I just love this. Like, as someone right now, actually, Lucio is my highest win rate this season and my highest most played by far. I'm like 63% win rate right now with Lucio and loving every minute of it. So I'm just excited about this. I think it's a great change.
Lucio's always been your favorite, man. Like ever since the beginning.
He's up there.
Since the beginning, definitely has ups and downs.
Original Lucio was boring as shit.
You still liked it.
Wall riding didn't give the speed boost.
Or you still, maybe you wished for a lot.
I played him a lot.
Yeah.
But that's because he was really good.
Okay, Tracer Bomb. Max damage decreased from 400 to 300. Oh, man. Thank God. I mean, I actually like this one because of how much damage it was doing to tanks and stuff. Like, Go ahead, speak to it.
I think this only nerfs a specific stereotype or archetype of Tracer. So if you think about archetypes of Tracer, they are like the sneaky ones, like Prophet, and I guess who else would be there? Let's just say Prophet. Then you have like the beast Tracers that, Striker is more like he will occasionally take duels and get into the backline, but he usually just beasts it through mechanics, right?
Yeah.
And then you have the type of Tracers that just play frontline bust, right? That will stick every single pulse bomb either on the Diva, most of the time on the Diva, or the Winston. And for them, for that last group, that's a huge nerf. Because that this could kill that playstyle, realistically, I think.
Yeah.
Is that a bad thing? Is Tracer not overplayed right now?
I don't know if it solves the issue of mechanically great Tracers just having a very, very high pick rate. I don't think you force Sabiolbia off Tracer with that change, necessarily. You will continue to stick other squishies or force Transcendence with it or whatever. What it does punish is who plays frontline, but for instance, Clockwork does it a lot for Houston if he plays. Back in the day, Grim Reality used to do it for Immortals a lot. I'm sure I'm forgetting. I mean, occasionally you have meta strategies where when Korean teams face off against each other and they seem to have located like the weakness either in the Diva or try to get the savior of the weakness of the actual team out of his mech, then you had the viable strategy of just busting the Diva, and that won't be a viable strategy anymore. Now, I don't mind too much that perceived lesser skill type of Tracer to be gone, right? Like I think most of us actually enjoy like a Tracer and either going back into the backline or coordinating with a Winston or the duels. I think the Tracer duels are the iconic things about Tracer most of the time.
I mean, I think Tracer recharges her ult so fast too that even if they have to do it like multiple times, just even if you are playing that frontline type of Tracer, just take a little bit more now, like to unmech that Diva. And I mean those are the biggest plays, right? When you unmech the Diva, the fight just completely turns. So I think making that just a little bit harder, giving the Diva a little bit more of a chance, is going to make for more interesting type of battles, or at least skirmishes in just the OWL right now. So I don't know, I like it. I think it's good. Yeah.
I will say it will be even harder to kill Cool Matt.
Oh, well, yeah.
That's for sure.
But it should be. He's good, you know? It's like, I mean, the divas should be rewarded. Right now, I think divas are, you know, like they're having to really work hard, like right now, to make some impressive plays. And we still see some, but I don't think it's appreciated enough right now. Like the casters are doing a pretty good job of like mentioning it when they do happen, but even like watching Kaguri play sometimes, you know, like she makes some really great plays, and it's just like, you know, it'd be nice to, well, there's other things with Shanghai, but you know, it'd still be nice to you know, have them just have the divas just be in battles a little bit longer. Okay, anything else here that's interesting?
I think that's
yeah,
most of the changes, but overall, I'm a huge fan of this PTR patch right now. Yeah. I think it's making steps in the right direction across the board.
Yeah.
I think actually just to add one little thing about the Lucia change, I actually think that the boob change of having it not consume ammunition might actually really increase his ability to dual traces a lot more.
Oh yeah!
Oh, wow. Okay.
No, it's definitely true. I mean, he already has a pretty good time in that fight. Like Lucio can dual tracer, so you're right. Yeah, that edges him a little further.
Wow. Yeah. Good point. Okay. Why don't we move on to some news? Given that there's a lot of news, and we're not going to cover everything that's happened in 3 weeks. I feel like with Overwatch, you know, the things are going well with Overwatch as an esport when there's just a lot of stuff going on, whether it's like players moving, players getting dropped, and other ones, you know, joining teams, or players getting kicked off teams for whatever. And you know, like, if that's like a measurement of like how we are with the esport, I think we're right up there now. I think that's like, we're just trying to check all the boxes for being a top esport, and I think we're getting that part of it down too. So kind of first off, let's start with like a hire, like a management hire. So Susie Kim was actually hired as general manager for the London Spitfire, which surprised me. Like I wasn't anticipating. I saw that she left Twitch, right, and then, you know, a day later, she announces on Twitter that she's going to be GMing the London team. So it kind of appears that she's kind of like taking on that mom role, you know, like, and, you know, obviously doing a lot, you know, getting them set up in the house and everything. But I think it's a great hire. Like Susie's, you know, obviously super passionate, smart, and you know, she has this rapport with the Korean players too. She's always had this rapport with Korean players. So thoughts on Susie, Yiska?
I think she's basically the expert of easing Koreans into Western culture, and has been for a while. Right? Yeah. So that's definitely a great hire. She also has been talking to a lot of people to just improve the team. I think them moving into a house is also an interesting solution. I think that might actually be beneficial, because I wonder how much divide there still is in the team. Because one thing that really rubbed me the wrong way, and I guess people can look at the VODs, but last time they played, and I don't know who it was against, but I specifically remember, it must have been the last game, that Huyal didn't want to contest the payload and just went back to spawn on Junkertown.
Wow.
I can't imagine that this was a miscommunication.
Right.
He just didn't want to stagger. And the same was true in the very same match for Closer, who jumped off, or tried to jump off, on Oasis, right? So I wonder if that's just something that they did in order to fix like possible talking points, where it's like, we always argue with each other when it's overtime, when it doesn't even matter that much anymore, so just throw the game away and next map. Or if it's actually something, you know, brewing in that team, especially between the old GC Busan roster, which we now see play more and more once again. Right? It's hard to speculate on these things. The only thing that I realistically really care about is that team members try their hardest to win, and that didn't communicate that feeling to me. So for Susie to get in and sort of, you know, align them once again. Also, after, let's not forget, they actually lost or got rid of Bishop mid-season, right? And I don't think they had anyone really filling that gap. That I mean, a head coach especially if you don't have a GM, does a lot of the GM role. So who did that? I think the coaches in general were just overworked, and I think in general it's just a great pickup because she also has the ability to communicate with Western audiences and really tell the story. And I quite enjoy the content that London keeps putting out, and showing the characters of the players.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, that Susie is the right person to help integrate these Korean players into Western culture. She's extremely knowledgeable and experienced and connected in the esports space, so it definitely makes sense. I think there's a lot of different reasons why you would hire different kinds of GMs. She will tell you about her bronze tier Bastion play. You're not hiring Susie to like help come up with strats for GC Busan, like the GC Busan players. Yeah. But if you're following her on social media, what you have seen is just an incredibly adorable series of images of how she's like organizing the house and like making sure like everyone like is comfortable and things like that, which you have to value that extremely highly. Like, you have to remember,
management, right?
Yeah,
like
most players in Overwatch League are quite young. This may be the first time that they lived outside of home for a lot of these players. So creating a welcoming environment where everyone feels like they're part of a family is so freaking important. I mean, look at Dallas. They're like the opposite of this. Like, if Susie can create that environment for her team, she's doing a great job. So I'm happy to see it.
So what you're saying is Dallas needs a Susie, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think one aspect is about Susie that obviously the community doesn't get to see as much, but she's not just the mom that basically helps the children, does whatever for them. She also has an authoritative side, right, where she can fairly represent a viewpoint and actually also make herself heard. I would feel bad if it was misrepresented in the sense that she only does like the stuff.
Absolutely.
Oh no,
right.
Yeah.
She definitely gets her point across.
No, she's not some fluff GM. Like, I mean, she's a legit GM here. So yeah, she'll definitely be in charge of. She's obviously in charge of all that, and and it's going to be more in touch with the management side of things, more so than, like you guys said, the strategic, the actual gameplay aspect of it. So, it's necessary. I think the ideal situation is to have one person for each, right? Like the coach kind of takes on, more of that, and just having that be the statistician and, figuring out exactly how just which players will play and that sort of thing. And then GM just takes care of basically everything else. And, a lot of times the GMs will have to like procure, trades and things like that. I don't know if Susie will probably do that, but I don't know. Maybe she will. Maybe I just haven't seen that side, of just the operations and just her doing that sort of thing. But whatever it is, it's definitely a really good hire for the London, and I think it'll start to show. It seems like they're showing tonight. They look pretty good tonight, at least.
Yes, right now.
Yeah, right now. Next up, it looks like Bunny end up transferring to the Valiant, which is, it's been definitely a few weeks now, from Seoul. And Valiant has a few moves, so why don't we just talk about all the Valiant moves? So the Unco Custa swap, happened with Dallas. Also, they released Envy. That's kind of how Bunny came on here. Overall, I think like the initial reaction was just like, man, there's a lot of moves by the Valiant. Like is this going to work out for them, at least in the short term? And well, the answers are obviously yes. Given that they're 5-0 right now, and their schedule's been a little bit on the light side. Like the weaker teams, I think. These first 5 games, but overall they still look like they're playing a lot better. Silk Thread also too, I think, ended up being sent over to the LA Gladiators. So let's talk about let's say Bunny. Well, we'll talk about Bunny in a second. Who's been the big winner between the Unco Custa swap here? Yiska?
I feel like okay.
All right. So okay, obviously the big winner is LA Valiant. That was kind of a dumb question, but like let's talk about just the swap, because a lot of people were surprised that Dallas sent Custa over there, given that Custa seemed to have, be the team leader, in the group of guys, and especially a lot of like disarray. He was like at least the voice of, the voice that they could follow. So that when they sent him over there, it was very, very shocking. And, Unko obviously wasn't working over at the Valiant. So they kind of got him kind of into this new mix. So, first off, were you guys surprised that this swap happened, in terms of just the dynamic within the team, as well as just even just skill level between the two players? Yiska?
Yeah, definitely. So I think ideally Dallas would have wanted, if they actually for some reason lost confidence in Chiptine, which I don't know why you would have. I mean, he had rough games, yes, but he also put him on mercy duty for the longest time.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think he has demonstrated over the Overwatch history that he is adaptable. You just need to give him a little bit more time. And that's really realistically the first time he hasn't been an absolute top performer on his position. So I would have definitely given him a little bit more time. Now, the thing is, where I think people underestimate that what Unko brings to the team is he bosses around his tracer. So it definitely gives Effect a little bit more guidance where to be. Now, Effect needs to be sort of, he's like a beast that you need to put a leash on, right? So you need to coordinate it sort of like with his tank, and then it's okay in terms of the offensive department. But when you need to get defensive and duel the other tracer, Effect wouldn't do that. He would rather kill someone else on the other team. Did it repeatedly, but that's not how tracer play works anymore in Overwatch League. It works against the lesser teams, which for most of stage 1 actually helped them a lot to sort of, smooth over their problems. Now, with Unko, it's basically like, from my understanding is that, or at least that is how Effect's play now looks like, is as soon as Unko spots the opponent tracer, he's having a panic attack and asks Effect to just duel that guy in order to not get too close to him. And that also is the reason why he dies significantly less than Chiptine used to be, because Chips is not that kind of guy, right? Okay. So that's definitely a great addition. Now, ideally, I think you would have wanted Unko and Custa. So yeah. I don't think that was possible, though. So the way it was communicated was they are only interested in Custa. So if you want to have Unko, you need to let go of him. And I guess they decided that this was, with OGE coming in supposedly as a shot calling and leadership type, that was the better trade. So when I think, okay, so is it actually a net negative for Dallas? I wouldn't say so. I think they got out slightly positive. Valiant just did overly so.
Okay.
Yeah, I honestly, like, people seem to be shitting on Unko right now in Twitch chat, for whatever that's worth. I still think Unko is a world-class Zenyatta. So if you've got Harry Hook, who can play Lucio and Mercy, and you've got Unko, who can really be a solid Zenyatta in every situation, then you have Chips. If let's say Ana gets buffed and you want to throw an Ana in there, they're pretty well rounded on the support front. But again, the thing that everyone is talking about is the fact that Custa was one of the few extremely vocal leaders in game that they're losing now. So that was the kind of head scratching part. But honestly, this is one that I think it's just too early to call, who is coming out on top, or if it was a good or bad trade. Obviously, Dallas just had a really terrible loss against San Francisco Shock yesterday, with Unko playing, I think, every game, if I remember correctly. But like, I still think that it's too early to say, and Unko could still pay off here.
Okay, well, let's talk about Bunny obviously transferring over, Envy, Silk Thread, leaving. Yeah, overall, what do you see from DPS from LA Valiant, and just generally, like, what's changed with some of these drops? I mean, clearly some of these guys, they were doing a rotation at one point, but when they had just they had a lot of DPS players. They had like 4 DPS players, right? And eventually they seem to be playing with with agilities and soon at this point. So what do we take, I guess, from this, in Bunny's role in all this?
I think the main thing it allows for Valiant to do is put Soon on Widowmaker and have another extremely competent Tracer. They didn't really have the Widowmaker player to go with Soon on Tracer, so in those situations like Junkertown where you want to run Tracer Widowmaker as your attack, they couldn't do that, and now they can. I think that's really the main thing that Valiant gets from this whole movement, and of course. We saw some amazing play out of Agilities, by the way. I know that's not what you asked, but like Agilities has been playing phenomenal this week, particularly yesterday. So it does seem like they have specialists now within like that cover pretty much every DPS, which is great.
Yeah, I think it's not only just that they cover every DPS, but it's also sometimes. This is now the third show I bring up this metaphor, basically, but it's like it's basically the way I conceptualize currently Overwatch is you used to get away with just being a pawn. So you would only play that one hero. Maybe sometimes someone else would have to be a rook or whatever, and would have to be a little bit more flexible. But most of the time, pre-Overwatch League, you were getting away with having one very good character. Now it's not even that your entire roster needs to cover all the heroes or most of the heroes, not Symmetra or Torbjorn or whatever. But now it's also very important. It's much more like a domino, right? So you need someone that can play Widow and Tracer, or you need to play someone that can play maybe Widow and another DPS pick that you can slot in when the rest of the map requires, for instance, a Genji or something like this, right? And I think in light of this makes much more sense, right? That you bring in Bunny, because not only does Bunny then take over the Tracer role, but it also allows Soon to be that domino piece that plays Tracer and Widow. And he also, inexplicably, has a pretty sick Junkrat, right? So he slots in pretty well now, I think.
That's a great point. And it wasn't too long that we were talking, especially with ZP here, that being a specialist was kind of what Overwatch was starting to look like. You would have kind of like your role, but now I think we're getting back to what Overwatch was supposed to be, which is like different stages in maps require different types of compositions, and sometimes you might have to switch. You might have to swap just to optimize your chances. So having that versatility, at least a 2-hero that being versatile enough to play 2 heroes, seems to be paying dividends now, and how teams are building their teams. So that's really, it's great to see, right? Being able to just at least continue that high level play, no matter what roster you have running or what lineup you have running that map. Okay, how about Silk Thread? Like Silk Thread to Gladiators. Have we seen him play that much? I'm trying to remember he's played some, but I don't think he's played much. And I think Silk Thread, even when he was on Valiant, like his playing time was reduced quite a bit too. So at least he wasn't dropped like Envy was. I kind of feel bad, like he was just released, which definitely is a tougher situation. But Silk Thread over at Gladiators. I don't know. Talk about Gladiators a little bit. I mean, they seem to they seem to be things seem to be working out over there just generally with them, and just at least this stage they seem to be playing pretty well. Last stage they played well too. So, any thoughts on Gladiators right now? The 2 LA teams.
I think that recruitment at first glance looks strange, right? Because you have hydration and they pretty much have overlapping hero pools in many ways. Thing is, I heard a pretty credible theory that now in some Western teams especially, Genjis organize dives. So what basically happens is, because you can't afford as a Winston to target call or do these micro calls anymore, at least set up fights, because you need to be in some room. Definitely don't take any chip damage, because that could ruin your dive. And if you then bring in a Genji that can coordinate dives, and that's also why Philly looks very, very different with Echo, because he's the shot calling Genji, while Shadowburn it doesn't do it as much. And with Silk Thread coming in, I don't know how much I guess, calling Fisher is willing to give up. Because if you look at Gladiator's playstyle, no other team in Overwatch League plays like that. No other league team in Overwatch League gives their Winston 100% orb uptime and mercy attention, right? It's completely crazy, but I mean, it
That's why
works.
He likes it there, man. Yeah,
I mean, he's a complete nut, especially in using his primal rage, right? Like we saw yesterday.
The balance. Oh my god, that was so awesome. Oh man. Yeah, I agree. I mean, Fisher and Asher together are just. I mean, they got something good there, you know. Like, and it's definitely feels like it's dominated by Fisher's play there. So yeah, Silk Thread, you know, he's always been known, you know, obviously for his Genji, and you know, that's kind of cool. I didn't really realize that, you know, some teams were considering, you know, just the Genji shot caller because of that reason, you know, just to be in hiding, or at least most of the other heroes will be hiding before they actually commit or to the dive. So okay, why don't we move on to so first bit of drama is the Dreamkazper thing. You know, at this point it's been about a week and a half old. Dreamkazper obviously had his contract terminated from Boston because of, you know, a lot of crazy discretions, which we don't have to go into, but, you know, definitely inappropriate actions, you know, with underage person. And yeah, so Boston, it might be just good to talk about just Boston, how before and after type of thing. So obviously before, I feel like Boston was kind of like back on the up and up, you know, like they had their ups and obviously in stage 1, then they kind of came back down stage 2 for, you know, maps or whatever reason. And then I felt like they were kind of like, you know, swinging back up, you know, whether it was because of the rest of the guys. And I mean, Dreamkazper obviously was a big part of it too. So when this happened, you know, I just kind of felt like, oh man, this is going to, you know, be tough for them, given that Dreamkazper had been playing so well recently. But, you know, right after this drama, they went and upset New York. So was that a fluke, guys? Or do you think that, you know, they are better, you know, or they seem to have recovered fine with Mistake, you know, obviously filling in?
Oh man, how good does that feel to be the Boston Uprising right now and come back from this really terrible situation where one of your players did a terrible thing, and not even just like any old player. This is probably the biggest surprise of Overwatch League so far. The biggest. I'm not framing this correctly, but the player that has surprised the most people had been Dreamkazper. I mean, he was looking so strong in so many different situations, both hit scan and projectile. So to see him go, like, seemed like it would be a huge hit, but it's opened up an opportunity for additional talent like Mistakes to come in and play so damn well. So if you're a fan of Boston Uprising or on that team, like this has got to be a really, really great moment for you to be able to bounce back like that and be so successful, beating NYXL, which looks like the best team in the league right now. No small feat.
I agree. Like, NYXL was notoriously good at just being very, very consistent, right? They only lost 2 matches, and I mean, I forgot what the other one was, but one of them was, I believe, against London. You can easily lose that one. So it's like NYXL is extremely good, probably also to just, you know, pace themselves against teams. They will give you exactly as much preparation. Now, what they said was, okay, they had to, you know, sort of tone it down because they were also feeling some burnout. And while I don't think that justifies their loss, though, as much, right? It's still, all season long, they were able to beat these top tier teams, still just going consistently. And I think it would have been a pretty big mistake was a pretty big mistake to underestimate them, and especially underestimate the Boston system. And at this point, like, I'm just about ready to admit, like, to Huck that he's an absolute genius, right? In terms, it's like,
absolutely,
okay,
yeah.
So let's not just say genius, but it's like just a very solid worker, right? Someone that really creates a structure that unarguably had to stomach the hardest Black Swan event, if you want to call it that. So the worst event that could probably possibly happen to your team, barring like a player maybe dying or whatever. Like that basically happened to that team, and they bounced right back. That is a quality of a team, and they're playing one close now and whatever, right? That is a quality of a team that you can't fluke that. It's simply impossible. That is a structure that is so inherently great, and just also to be able to slot in a player that usually was only known for his tracer most of the time, but you incorporate him in the system. Now, how do most Overwatch League teams use their subs? They give them like, play this niche pick, and if you're lucky, you're like, if Sombra in 6 months or 3 months is relevant, then you get some playtime. No, that guy must have practiced for all eventualities and must have increased the size of his champion pool to also take over. Just in, there's some events like that, just illness, for instance, right? Where mistakes would have to take over. So to see it structured like that, I almost feel like they have to be the sort of
managers of the year type of thing.
Yeah, just the way people will build Overwatch League teams in the future. Because what they famously did, everyone, including me, I'm quite happy that I didn't release some content I was planning to do, because I was like, okay, that's pretty unfair. But it's like everyone was shit-talking them before the season, weren't they? So what did they do? They took high gambles. One didn't pan out as much. Snow doesn't get much playtime, but Note is now a starter, and he looks like one of the most aggressively great divas, right? So they took an aggressive gamble with a minor invest, which is just great business sense, right? And then with that saving, they just invested in coaching staff. Now look at all the other teams. Even NYXL, I believe, only has 2 guys. London only has 2 guys. Dallas definitely didn't really,
no guys.
benefit from having too few guys.
I know, yeah.
I think at any given point, Boston had either 4 or 5 guys with a GM that is actively involved in your strategy, in your team building, contract signing, talking to players, giving them guidance, because he has the experience of it. I mean, this is your system. This is how you build an Overwatch.
Yeah, it's extremely impressive. And breaking news.
What?
They just reverse swept London.
I know.
They just won against London less than 3 minutes ago in a reverse sweep. Is this team the best of the league? What the hell is happening?
I mean, we definitely talked about it, but the other guys have stepped up. I mean, Striker's insane right now. Gamsu. I mean, Kelly's all 4 of those guys have been playing exceptionally well. So it's not just this. I mean, obviously the system creates an environment so these guys can really flourish. But still, the players themselves are playing at a top level. Like Striker, I think is one of the best DPS players. Period. Like in Overwatch League right now. So they're able to carry even Mistake is doing a great job of filling in, but Mistake definitely at times you can tell that he's a little bit out of sync with the main team, or at least when we were watching the Mayhem match. But overall, yeah, this is impressive and definitely deserves to be lauded. So. Boston, I think that by the end of the year, like you said, Yiska, like this is going to be kind of a model. It sure looks like a craft team. You know what I mean? Like the New England Patriots have always been built, except for Tom Brady for the most part, but interchangeable parts, right? Like it's like everybody works hard, everybody overachieves on that team, and I think we're seeing the same kind of formula in Boston. And obviously Huck at the helm there, but I'm sure he's gotten some influence just from the exec team. That's related to the craft, or that works with the craft team too. So it's been definitely a great model to take a look at, and just happy to see it. Okay, well, in terms of like this stage, I mean that's a huge upset for Boston, and I think it puts them in a good position, right? This stage to possibly make a run for it again, like in the playoffs. Well, I was going to look at the standings a little bit later, but I mean we can take a look at it now though.
They will win that stage. I'm pretty sure. Who's going to stop them now?
Yeah,
they beat the 2 best teams in the league.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, just forget about record. It's just purely about how good they're playing right now. Yeah. So let me bring up the the standings here. That's so awesome, man. Because they got knocked out by Houston, in that epic like stage 1, and it's kind of heartbreaking, given how it's just a surprise they were. And now they're 5-0. So
yeah. I
mean, they're looking really, really good here. And we got the Valiant and the Uprising at 5-0, but obviously the strength of schedules are quite different.
Mm-hmm.
Boston definitely have had the much tougher one. So yeah, this is gonna fare well. We'll see if Boston can beat New York again. New York obviously said they didn't even prep for Boston at all, and that's kind of like their excuse as to why they lost. But we might be headed for a rematch here, which would be pretty sweet in the playoffs, or at least in the end of stage 3. That'd be great. Okay, next bit of news is this week. It's just been a bunch of Dallas drama again. It seems to happen like every month or so. We get something here. The latest is that KyKy and Rascal was released first, right? And then KyKy was then soon after, released. So obviously a lot of talk around each of them being released. First off with Rascal, there was lots of talk about communication, like he didn't have a translator. And that was like the big issue. And then a lot of people, the community reacted like, why did you even like get him then? Like if you knew this was going to be a problem. Astro did an AMA. He answered a lot of questions. One of the questions he answered was that he did have somebody, like Lonnie was there, Violet, for those of you old StarCraft 2 fans out there. He's definitely working with the team, and he's definitely there to be translating for Rascal. So, a little bit of question as to why, what was going on. Clearly, there's a lot of, issues with culture there, and the players, getting along. A little bit of Koreans versus the others, with Rascal in effect and the others. So I think this is like the first step of trying to fix some of the dysfunction that's going on over there. KyKy being released as a coach. Lots of talk of swirling around about that, at least the community, just doing their thing, making claims that KyKy should be taken out. But for the longest time, KyKy was in the coaching seat. So finally, they're removing KyKy. It seemed to be a player's decision, according to the AMA. I think there was even options for him, or they talked about, what about just having him as an assistant coach, maybe to help with transition. And I think the players decided that it would be best for him just not to be involved at all. So let's talk about the Rascal thing first, and then we'll get to the KyKy thing. So Rascal, I feel like we never even saw the potential of Rascal in this roster. Like Rascal's abilities are great. We all know his abilities, and it was kind of crazy just to see him leave, his first team and then come to this team. Thought maybe with a fresh start that we'd actually get a chance to really see Rascal shine, but we never saw him shine. I don't know. Any thoughts on just Rascal and maybe why the fit just wasn't great? Ben, you want to start this one? Yeah.
What I understand, it was cultural.
Yeah.
It was not necessarily a situation where he didn't have the right translator and couldn't communicate. Obviously that adds pressure to it, but from what I've heard, it sounds like he did not really respect his teammates. He did not really respect the coaching staff or the management. So that's an untenable situation. You can't really have an environment where one of your star players basically is shitting on everyone all the time. And I don't know I wasn't in the locker room. I wasn't there when they're scrimming, but that's what I've heard. And I just understand why you'd want to get rid of someone who has that type of outlook on everything, sooner than later. You don't want to have them sit around and fester and increase the toxicity or the toxic environment more so. So I everything I've heard sounds like that's the case, and I understand why you'd get rid of them.
Yeah, I think the one thing I don't think is true is that Rascal is now somehow damaged goods because he's sort of been kicked or whatever you want to call it from 2 teams now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think for London, it was probably more like he wanted to be a starter somewhere and he couldn't be.
Right.
And for Dallas, well, sometimes you don't fit with the chemistry. And it's not like the chemistry there was very welcome in the first place, right? He came into a dumpster fire, basically, right? So
right, that's a good description of it. A dumpster
right,
fire.
so
not just trash, but it's on fire too. So wow. Okay.
So I think maybe it could have worked, but at some point it's just probably best for all parties. Now, the problem is I would have wished that Rascal, if that had happened within the transfer window, because I think some teams with, let's say, a solid coaching structure could have taken a gamble on him, because little secret, guys, every team with Westerners and Koreans has exactly the same problems. Mm-hmm. Problem is that you don't hear about them because they're being handled internally, and they're being successfully handled internally, right? Now, obviously, if you don't win, that definitely exacerbates the problem, right? But yeah, I think there was just not either enough coaching staff or not coaching staff with the focus skill, right? So, for instance, that is also, I mean, I don't want to skip the topic, but that is definitely also true for KyKy, that I don't think he's damaged goods now, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, in terms of handling this, this is definitely a problem with multiple teams. Like, how do we handle this? Like, what is the answer to this? Is the Korean players have to learn English? And I mean, there just needs to be dedication to actually learning English, because translating is not going to be good. I mean, I can't even imagine what that even looks like, in terms of what comes and just this translator is doing, like in this real time, shooter game. I feel like that's insane. So, is that what we're seeing? I mean, we just seen more, Korean and Chinese players learning English. I mean, we even have like Korean and Chinese players on the same team, so that's like kind of crazy too, with the Dragons. So, what have you seen so far, Yiska? Like, for other teams trying to fix this problem?
So, one thing I would say is, yes, you should probably learn English. And now with Rascal, it's a special case because he was on a only Korean team, right? There was not, other than relating to the London audience, there was no high priority for him to learn English. Though I do think in 7 months you can definitely, if it's like, so your first priority is win games in Overwatch. Your second priority is, or like, how do I achieve this goal? Maybe I need to learn a lot of English, right? Mm-hmm. That wasn't true for Rascal for the most part, but for all the other Korean players, I think you definitely can achieve a certain amount of fluency within 7 months if it is any sort of priority. It is definitely in the heat of the moment. I know for myself, I can't even call in German. Like my mental faculties are completely, my mental CPU is basically overheating by playing the game, right? I can't really communicate while doing that. Now doing it in another language, definitely, probably, and I don't have any experience there in terms of language teaching, but it's probably definitely much harder to do. But yeah, in general, I think those teams that have these different cultures, one thing you definitely have to sort of fix is the group building. And you fix that by social interaction, doing team exercises, by not necessarily allowing them to, group up in different apartments,
different
maybe
factions almost, that type of thing.
Yeah, because that happened we know that happened on some teams. That was a big issue with Valiant, right? And it was a pretty public issue that the Koreans the Koreans thought everyone else sucks, and then they were like, oh, the French guys are actually pretty good. Okay, so you can come over here now, and the others suck, right? And that's
wow. Okay.
So
they have the penthouse basically. They're like, oh, you're allowed to come in now. Yeah, you're getting it. Wow, that's not a very great dynamic there. I mean, this is going to be interesting because we're going to have more teams here in, like, I don't know how many months, right? Like I think that Nate mentioned something about is it 6 teams or 8 teams? It's either 6 or 8 or around that for the next season. And you got to imagine there's going to be a lot of Korean players, just coming from those teams, or they're going to be filling those teams, given that the Korean pool seems to be, the highest skilled ones, of course. So this problem is going to be a very common thing. Like I almost feel like there just needs to be a best practice in terms of management as to how to deal with this.
I don't think that it has to come. It's even necessarily the language barrier in this case. It seems pretty clear that Dallas has had a culture issue for a very long time. They lost their confidence, and then they suddenly just fell apart. And it just seems like they haven't had the cultural leadership to say, it's okay, guys, we're struggling right now, but we're gonna keep at it, and we want people to feel comfortable and play what they're good at, and like just build on a foundation. That just never happened. I think that's far more to blame than any language barrier, because as you said, 3/4 of the teams in the league have Korean players playing with Western players like on a regular basis. Mm-hmm. So this is not a unique problem to these guys. I really think it comes down to a confidence issue. Like these players in game, out of game, everywhere, just haven't felt confident or comfortable in their situation.
Yeah, I mean, let's just talk about the original MV team. I mean, I feel like that core roster has really taken a lot of the confidence hit. Like Chips and Coco. I mean, like what happened to them? It's like it's kind of amazing, like how much of how much they've digressed. Taimu too, right? Taimu, I think, is had his lulls. I still think he. We were talking about it earlier, right, Ben? Like, I think he still has it in him. It's just it's gonna just take some work to kind of get back. And then even like Mickey, right? I mean, Mickey's also like just not quite the same, or at least from a standpoint of being a top diva versus the relative to the other teams. So I mean, he's not even playing diva right now. Like Seagull is playing diva. So we're seeing like the core of the team actually having issues with confidence. And like, if you're management, what do you do? Like, what would you do if you were a GM of this team right now? I mean, do you kind of try to start fresh again, or do you I don't know, or try to apply some techniques to try to get them going again? It's like, how can you get them going when all these teams? I mean, you're pretty much got a gauntlet every single week. There's no teams that are going to give you like a freebie. So I don't know how you even develop this confidence outside of, I guess, practice, but you still have to show it every single week on stage.
I mean, sadly, this season is pretty much over for them. I mean, they have 0% chance of making the playoffs. Like, I guess the best they could hope for is maybe playoffs for stage 4 and 5. Wait, stage 4.
Yes.
So to me, this season has to be all about rebuilding the foundation and rebuilding the confidence. I mean, we saw glimmers of the old Taimu Widowmaker that we know and love last night.
Yep.
Yes, they got destroyed by Shock 4-0, but there were moments where you could see that Taimu definitely still has it. He just hasn't had the opportunity to get back into that zone. I mean, how many times has he played Widowmaker or McCree in the last couple of months? I can't even remember it happening. He's only been on tank duty for months. And just imagine if this entire time they'd been letting him, try out the McCree, try out the Widowmaker. I would put a lot of money to say like that the team would be in a much better situation right now if everyone was able to play their comfort zone. And you talk about guys like Coco. All right, I will admit there's some folks who kind of disagree with me on Coco. Some folks think he really was not doing well and he should have been benched and he totally deserved it. But I think that this team would have been stronger if you had Coco playing main tank, you had Taimu flexing between DPS and Roadhog. Like the strategy and the formula that worked for them, in contenders leading up to Overwatch League, I think they'd be so much better right now if they could all play those comfortable picks and just grow from that. So that's what I'd do.
Yeah, I would. So one thing I have to say is, I think winning a stage is a fine goal, and I think the community actually undervalues that a little bit, because this is basically like our minors or whatever, right? So,
Yep.
like for in Dota or whatever, right?
League, yeah.
Or even a major if you want, right? So I think that is definitely, if you want to set a goal, like just getting into the finals would be a pretty good one for stage 4. Now, if it doesn't look like that, this is a reasonable or a doable thing, I would literally brainwash them into not deriving their self-confidence in general.
Yeah.
I think that's an unhealthy thing, to derive your self-confidence from winning and losing. I would literally brainwash all of these egos into just accomplishing their team set goals. Did we have the dive on point? Did I don't know, the Oge and Effect work together? Did Effect manage to not just go off by himself because he required to win so much? Like, redirect that focus in some way, and then build a unit up once again, right? Maybe like you also need some individual talks with these players, because my understanding is that especially bench players in Overwatch League don't get these one-on-one talks, don't get, you know, the feeling of being really something greater, and that is what Philly definitely does probably better. So because have we seen anyone from the Philly bench saying anything? Like Joe Meister seems fairly involved, right?
He's
like
cooking, man.
A player that isn't on par with your starter mechanically is a free analyst for you. Why not give him a role and really help the other guy? I mean, the skill sets are not completely overlapping. It's not like your starter is better at everything than the other guy. Let them sort of go into a room each other and teach each other, right? And to just have like small goals for everyone to sort of go after, and not have these stories like Numlocked, for instance, who doesn't see a reason for him to be there, is really a tragedy, right? So I think that's the two things I would do. I would give everyone a reason to be in that team and clearly communicate it. First, personally, so what you think as a head coach this player can bring to the team, and then in the team environment, make clear this guy is valuable, right? And then I would reprogram their incentive structures, and I would actually get very mad with them for trying to win the game more than trying to win it by the correct metrics that all have agreed on previously. Yeah,
I think that's a good, structure, basically, and just having like a very objective goal structure, and just playing a different game. I think that is it's something that they need. And like you were talking about, Ben, too, like you see moments, but that like summarizes the entire Overwatch League experience for Dallas. Is like they show moments of brilliance, and it's usually individual brilliance, but never have they showed the consistent type of team play that is really required these days. So all right, a lot of this has to do with coaching.
One last thing I'd mention about Dallas is they have consistently risen to the occasion against better teams throughout the entire season. And you've seen it against Valiant this week. You've seen it against NYXL, taking them to Game 5. Every single set they've ever played against Seoul Dynasty has been really, 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 really good. So that's proof to me that they've got it still. It's still there. And just focus on that.
Okay, so a lot of this has to do with coaching, clearly. And, KyKy, we also mentioned, was released. And, Yiska, you were saying KyKy's not damaged goods, and I agree with you too. But how much of this is on KyKy? Just clearly he's in charge of game plan. I mean, when it came to the AMA, Hastro laid it out. There's there was like one instance in particular where they said like it'd be nice if you played XQC in this 1 week, but for the most part it was KyKy's call, Kyle's call as to who was going to play and just what strategies they would have, which usually involved switching a lot. That was one of the things that you were probably alluding to, Ben. It's just like it'd be nice if you just stuck with one strategy and just like at least just solidify something, and not just like constantly switch. So my original question, like, is this on the coach, like Yiska?
So categorically, yes. But okay, so here's the problem with KyKy's situation. You're in a situation where you don't have job security in esports, or especially as a coach, right? So you can't just walk away from a deal. It's also it sort of communicates, I think in esports at least, a loser mentality. We've seen a lot of coaches in esports get one gig and then never again, right? So that's a very scary thing to do. For the most part, he had success with it, right? I think he was the right coach for their situation pre-Overwatch League. Now, you know, I think everyone knows these situations where it's like, okay, so you're working with someone and you're on a first name basis. You might even pick beers with him every once in a while. And suddenly he's promoted to be your boss. Now, what's the relationship like, right? It's hard to go last names once again, right? Or in Germany, it's actually even a bigger problem because we have this different way to address each other in the second person. So we can't say just you. We need to say something different. It's a huge social issue. Now, how do you tell them, okay, this is a new boundary. I need you to do this more, right? It's very, very hard to do. Now, ideally, I think the point of no return, where in a world where you have complete job security after this, I think KyKy should have realized that he had to go sooner. Now, I don't blame him for trying as much as possible, because he also has a friendship with these guys and wants them to succeed and wants to help them, right? So it's also that with that many egos on the team, and we also don't know how that team structure came about, how these players got into his team. But if he actually had full authority of that, he certainly has to take some blame from that there. But in general, I think, yeah, the circumstances made it a lose-lose situation for him. But I still think the responsibility would be on him, and a person that tries to do the right thing would have probably left after stage 1.
Oh, I mean, tried to do the right, so
for the team in order to maximize win rates.
I mean, I think that's a hard thing to assess there, because you don't know who's coming in. You know, maybe I guess in a situation where you're picking your successor,
Sure.
you know, like that sort of thing, maybe I could see that being him making a decision like that, but that never happens. That, like, nobody in sports ends up wanting to get removed from their position, regardless of job security or not in esports, right? So, I mean, I don't think that's ever going to happen. Like, I don't think people will literally step down as coach. I mean, people step down as coach most of the time just so they don't have to get fired. You know, like it's more for face than anything else.
I just real quick, real world-class coaches, at least in European esports, if they go to their owner, say, I need this in order to win, and the owner says no, world-class coaches walk. They don't care. That they obviously have brand value. That's like, if we're talking about walking, you know, like Monty said about Korean casters, I think this is one of those instances where that's actually a strong play. And every owner hopefully would recognize something like this, right? It's both, like, in some sense, it displays character strength in both ways, right? Either you tried your hardest, and it's not like he was lazy or anything. He was trying, right? And he was trying hard, and he was probably trying too hard in many, right? But walking from that situation where possibly you weren't given the tools to, and that, like, would have probably forced a change in that team, but B, would have also sent a real message to the management. Now, we obviously, this is all speculation because we don't know what actually happened between Hastra and him, and I don't know who Hastra answers to nowadays with his investors or whatever. But I mean, Dallas Fuel is not doing badly financially, I would think.
For instance, they're still arguably the most popular team. they're still the most popular team in Overwatch League.
Oh yeah, the moment that they like, if they come back and start winning a bunch of games, it's over. They are still the most popular.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it doesn't matter how good or bad they are. I mean, they clearly did a good job with branding and obviously with the envious machine behind it too. Like they're doing just fine in terms of that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I know what you mean by that, Yiska. It could have been made a statement. It's just it's tough. It's super tough and a very risky play to do that just because they could throw you under the bus. Like Dallas could completely spin it PR-wise. Like you're quitting on us. Like, oh my God, we had our coach quit on us. Holy shit, that's like no way. That's like, should you ever hire this guy again?
Yeah.
Right. So,
and you also in esports, you can't count on your players not being snakes and not backing you up in that situation.
Right. Exactly.
The scene is not as mature, and also that people have too much skin in the game. If you want, like this could ruin their career if they speak out in that way. So I definitely understand. I just think like that would be for me the optimal scenario, but it's easy talking for me. I have no idea what the background info was. I have no idea what the life situation of KyKy was. It's just I thought that the point of no return was long gone before he actually was fired or whatever, or let go.
Yeah, they usually call it losing the locker room, right? I think he lost that locker room a long time ago, or at least in stage 1 or whatnot. So, it would be interesting to see if and when he does end up getting another opportunity. But yeah, now there's an open spot for Dallas, so it'll be interesting to see who they end up hiring for that too, because that is a job that, I mean, a lot of people, if they have a choice, they're not going to take that job, probably, just because it is a huge challenge, and I mean, you're going to be getting a lot of crap, like in the buildup of this team. So it's going to take a special personality to be able to persevere through that, and really get this team back in shape. Okay, well, let's kind of move on from the drama. Let's talk about some of just stage 3. What we've kind of seen. I know we showed the standings earlier. We can kind of show them again. You can take a look at just like the overall standings, which is like super tight. I mean, this is like exciting to see, these teams. It's 8 teams, right? Make the playoffs. So the
6.
Is it 6?
Right?
No, it's 6. Yeah, sorry, I was thinking something else. 6. So the 6 teams right now are super close. I mean, we've got 5 teams, 1 game apart. Like number 6 and number 2 are literally 1 game apart from each other. So New York's pretty much it looks like it's going to be locked. Even if they had like a bad season in like season stage 4, I think they'd be completely fine here. So this stage obviously is going to play a big role. Boston obviously making a huge play for this, but we still got spots up for grabs. Between, I mean, maybe New York loses again and gets like super interesting. The Fusion too, like I never know sometimes with Fusion. Like sometimes they look like one of the best, like literally the best team in the league, and then the next week they kind of like play down to their competition. So what do you guys think? Like predictions right now, mid season or not mid? We're definitely past mid stage here. Who do you think is going to get those last 2 spots?
I mean, if anyone falls from their current position, I get the feeling it would be Philly. I
mean, they have their map record's definitely much more vulnerable, right, than the New York one. Like it's much closer to the other 2 teams. Like if you're talking about Gladiators and Seoul Dynasty. Seoul Dynasty, man. I don't know. Like I don't actually think they're gonna get in like again this year. I think it's between the Gladiators and Fusion, whichever team gets hot, right, in these last couple weeks. I think it's going to be pretty. It's going to make a pretty good run there. Oh, that's one thing that we didn't talk about either. There's going to be 4 teams that make the playoffs this time around, so that's nice. I think it'll at least even out the number of matches played, which is nice because the team that kind of comes from just that gets that the last spot, number 3 spot, has to play a bunch of games, right, leading up to it, or at least the extra game, right? So yeah, we'll get 3 games, I guess, on the Sunday, just the semis and the finals, and then kind of determine that. But yeah, overall, just anything that you noticed so far in the stage? Like any teams you think might be dark horses or might get hot here at the end? Because it seems like always one team gets crazy hot, and either comes close to making the playoffs or does make the playoff.
I've always been a Gladiators fan. Just maybe it's just my my heart more than anything, but I've been playing games with Surefour for many years, so I just love watching that team do well, and they're doing really well right now. So I'd put them at the top of my list as like teams I'd like to see have upsets.
Yeah, I mean, isn't it crazy that so I think you could even argue that the extension for one slot might help New York Excelsior get into the playoff.
Right.
Because we don't know, like I'm looking at the other screen, we don't know how they will play against Fusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So realistically, it could have been just 3 Western teams in a stage playoff. Now, how crazy is that?
That is
right?
pretty crazy. Oh my God, if New York got knocked out, holy smokes, that would be 4 Western teams. Oh, that would be insane, dude. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think ultimately, I think NYXL has another gear that they could kick into during stage playoff. I think so. I was famously promoting the idea that London was sandbagging through stage 1 and stage 2.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
And like this seems to be more likely now that sandbagging is really a stupid way to frame it. It's more like pacing themselves in order to not have burnout too much, right?
Yeah.
And to just put in like the B team every once in a while, so these guys are satisfied with their position in the team, and then also maybe not prepare as hardcore for certain opponents, or if you get a trap game, not completely overwork yourself, where you're suddenly losing both games that week, even though you only had one opponent, a very strong opponent, and then the mid-tier team also beats you. So I think just grinding it out at this point is probably what NYXL is doing. And then as long as they stay in the stage finals every single time, I think that is just about everything that they can hope for, because it's very unlikely to me that they will ever let go of the first spot in till stage 4.
They have too much of a lead here. I mean, they've got like a 5-game lead on Boston and Seoul right now, so that's almost like an entire stage. Like they could go 0-5 right now and still be number 1. So
yeah, so that's crazy for NYXL. They basically, so like if you measure it by prize money won, they basically want to get into all stage finals, win those, then get the first place in Overwatch in the complete season, which is probably at this point pretty much a given if they make it to all the stage finals. So if they can pace themselves and then go like hardcore in these crunch times positions where it's like stage playoffs or obviously playoffs of the entire Overwatch League, if they can then take the resources they saved within themselves and then explode once again, I think that's the preferable situation for them. Yeah. And I think they pretty much communicated exactly that.
Well, I mean, their explosion last stage barely pulled it off. So, like the gap is closing. It's clear that it's been closing, whether it's because they're, they are what happens to people that are on top. They just have a hard time figuring out how to improve until, they do get beat some, or if it's something else. Like, I think it's going to be a pretty exciting playoffs again, whoever makes it. What do you guys think about Shock? I feel like Shock if they could just like not have Super be sick and, like they could just like have that core there with our Architect 2. Oh no, gosh, I feel
Dante
like
is playing amazing.
Dante is playing amazing, but I feel like the pieces are there. They just haven't played enough together. So I don't know. I kind of feel like they might be in a really deep dark horse, but they have the potential to go on a run here. And I don't think Seoul's going to do it. I think Seoul's just struggling right now. So, I see potential in Shock being able to pull out some kind of crazy miraculous run, and that'd be quite a story too. if they actually did. That'd be pretty awesome. Okay, let's see. Actually, what's the current score now between the two? You guys know? Playing right now. Let me see. Actually, see.
Oh, it's still first map.
Oh, is it? Okay. I was
And
gonna say.
yeah, they looped around, so it looks fairly even at the moment.
Yeah. Well, another thing to talk about is let's talk about the bottom. Of course, it's everybody's, the just novelty thing is to pick when the Shanghai Dragons are going to win, and we've got the Mayhem versus the Dragons coming up here. I think it's next week, and of course I've been doing just the Mayhem parties with just the Chaos crew, which we started, and man, it's so close. I mean, we played a great series against the Shock this past week here in West Palm Beach, and then we've got like an Orlando party coming up this week too. But for all this talk about the Mayhem like looking better, and they're like, oh man, they're actually like a sleeping giant and all this stuff. I mean, we're still 0-5. Like, look at our game record. Our game record's terrible. So, I mean, is this more hype than anything else? I mean, Seiya Players had his moments. Like, he's just like absolutely amazing. Awesome Guy had his, like, I think clearly Awesome Guy's out of sync with the team, but you can kind of see a little bit of a difference there. And we haven't gotten a chance to see Logix and Seiya Player really get a chance to play a lot together. But is there truth to this, Yiska, or this is just like hot air that's just trying to hype up the Mayhem right now?
The problem I see is that while they did definitely get great players, I feel like the way the meta has been for the longest time, they didn't get them in the right position. So they like at Winston's Lab, the guy that basically does everything found like a golden ratio, and it's like the standing you have in Overwatch League is almost directly correlated with the strength of your flex support, for instance.
Yeah.
Now, so I think Mayhem probably would have to be considered, the 11th best backline in the Overwatch League. So I don't know. I think they should have probably. I don't know how involved Sebusai still is as a caller on Mayhem, but I would say a lot, which is kind of interesting because, for instance, some Fusion players have been saying, I don't know if it's. I mean, I don't think they mind, but that it's very hard to play Lucio nowadays. Keep your flex support alive and communicate at the same time. So that is a problem certainly, and I think Mayhem should have just stocked up on backline players, and they missed that window. But we have to say, like, even though they're obviously bottom of the league, they are the team that has dodged most of the drama most effectively. So from that part, like the only thing where they really had a problem with was that the community was mad with the ownership not getting them the tools that they need to succeed, right? So I think Mayhem is in a fine position. I don't think they like from the resources they've committed, and also just comparing that to all the other teams, they're not necessarily underachieving by any sense of the imagination. So I think Mayhem's just sound. I don't know. I like their progress.
I mean, if there's a team that's assuming that type of process that you were talking about, the Dallas Fuel should probably do, is definitely the Mayhem. I mean, they clearly have been out of this contention after probably stage 2, to be honest. So they've been clearly just trying to work on playing good Overwatch, and we definitely have seen times where they've done it. And I think they were the communication, they fixed their communication, right? That was like the huge thing that they fixed in the last stage, and they ended up getting a couple of victories during that. And then now we introduce new players, so they're having a little bit of a reset there, because they have to integrate these guys and get used to them. But I hope they do, man. There's like so many good support players right now in Contenders, so hopefully they'll be able to snag some of those guys like right when the season's over, before like the influx of 6 teams or whatever comes in and nabs up a lot of good players. All right, so Shanghai. I mean, are we picking Mayhem over Shanghai then? I'm assuming. Like, if I see Bren wearing the cape again, man, I'm just like I don't know, man. He seems to be trying to guess guess the Shanghai win like every single week, and it's just not happening. So is it going to happen this season? How about that? Is the Shanghai first win going to happen this season?
Hard to say, man. It doesn't look like it right now.
Yeah.
Like I see Dallas like kind of bouncing back a little bit. Shock's looking better. Mayhem's looking better.
Let's look at the schedule. Let's look at the schedule. So you see where they're playing. I mean, the Mayhem. I think the Mayhem might be their best chance. Like this is coming up. This is tomorrow. Shoot, I didn't realize it was tomorrow. Jeez. Yeah. So tomorrow's are going to be obviously our party in Orlando too. So definitely, if you're in the area, go and check out the Chaos Crew at is the Oblivion. The Oblivion Tap House, I believe. So. Yeah, this one, I think that's going to be their best chance. Week 4, they got Boston, Fusion, and then week 5, they've got, let's see, what do we have? Shanghai, we've got New York, and we've got London. So I think this is their best chance right here. This is good. Like, they literally play the best teams in the league the rest of the way. So if they don't get it against the Mayhem, then I think that's going to be it for them. Do you see progress there at least? You know, they obviously added the 3 players, and I think they're getting better, but clearly, you know, they still have a long ways to go. How do you build that team? That team is, man, I don't even know what that's going to be a difficult thing because
I think you got to go back in time.
Yeah, repick people. That's a team. Like, would you start from scratch at the end of the season? Like, would you just wait, like, just release that entire team and start over?
I think a lot depends on if there's a second China slot, so you can just go full Korean, or if there's some pressure from your audience or your fans to go Chinese players once again.
There's good Chinese players too. They just don't necessarily have them all. So, yeah. Anyways, well, it's going to be rough season for the Shanghai Dragons, but you know, somehow though, PR wise, they are still coming out pretty well. People love that team.
Yeah, I just hope that the players can like not take it too hard on themselves. If they start pulling at Dallas, it'll be bad. Yeah.
No, they seem to. I don't know. Now, like I said, they seem they're the most well liked 0-25 team I've ever seen, like in anything. Yeah. So. All right, well, I think that's all we have for like topics. If we got any questions, guys, any Q&A in the chat or Twitter, let me see if we got anything on Twitter. Let's see. Yeah, I don't have anything right now. But anybody in chat, if you got a question, just definitely put it in chat, and then we'll definitely read it out. But yeah, so I've been doing these like watch parties, which has been fun. I don't know if you guys have been following the watch parties with just what like the 5 Deadly Venoms have been doing, you know, and we've been doing some like charity events recently, like the Outlaws watch party or fan organization, and the 5 Deadly Venoms. They raised like, I forget how much money they raised. I think they might have raised like $1,000 or something, but it seems to be, you know, happen in every single they're trying to get it going like. Just these final weeks of the season where, you know, we'll have like these fan organizations playing against each other leading into the matches when we actually play each other in the matches. So it's kind of fun, man, getting these local scenes going, you know, like when the teams finally come back to the locations, then we'll actually have a fan base. So been trying to do that with a guy, or at least with Lon Spawns here in chat, you can see, and it's been a lot of fun. We have like a bigger challenge than everybody else. We've got like an entire state. Like everybody else has one city, man. It's not fair at all. Like we've got like 5 cities, or 6 cities. It's kind of crazy. All right, here's a question from Lon Spawns. What's the possibility of seeing Mendo get playing time in the Outlaws? Oh man,
what's like the most obscure character that you could main? Doomfist? I don't know.
I guess
he's gonna be a Doomfist main.
You mean like an actual viable character?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, I guess it could be. Yeah, the Mendo story is just it's bizarre. You know, because everybody thinks that Mendo is just like not caring, and he doesn't have to show up, and everybody's like, how is that even possible, right? But the story from his side is that he talks to the coaching staff all the time, and it's just he has an issue with confidence, I think, right, on stage, and that's just played out. So I don't know. It's kind of like I don't understand when teams have players, whether it's like Mendo or it's even IDDQD, and like they just sit on the roster and they do nothing. Like what's the benefit of that? It's like, do you guys see any value in that? I mean, I guess if you're a streamer, it's good. Like IDDQD at least streams, but Mendo, I mean, he doesn't even stream these days, does he? Like very much.
Yeah, but I mean, he still has fans, right?
Yeah.
I think the Mendo story has been pretty hard to assess from the outside for a while now, right?
Yeah.
But from what he says, it's also a very hard situation to deal with, right? I think he has been pretty open on Reddit about mental health issues, and that is also nothing new for him, right? That was already part of the whole C9 debacle they had back in the day. So, like, the problem is that someone in a situation like this also doesn't have the ability to inherently help himself or pull himself up by his own bootstraps necessarily, right? It's very hard for him to fix that. And like I really like that Tyrone seems to be helping him so much, but like he himself is new in that culture, so he doesn't know how to get a therapist or something, right? Or how to approach these certain issues. I think it was a bold move by Flame in the beginning. So I remember that announcement stream after. So he announced his roster, and he went on his personal stream and talked about the reasons he signed these players. And he was like, he felt that, and I don't want to misquote him, but I think it was something like, he felt that if anyone could make Mendo work, it would be him. And it's an admirable thing, because I always thought Mendo was possibly one. I don't follow CS as much, but he seemed to be one of the most insane FPS talents we had in Europe for a long time back in the day. Now that has been also pretty much a year ago, if not longer.
Longer, probably.
And I wish, because he used to be sick, right? Like he used to be a very good player, and I think he has the inherent ability, and I don't think he's lazy or anything. It's just a very strange or very hard situation to deal with, which you can only sympathize and hope that having that Overwatch League contract allows him to have access to the healthcare or whatever he needs to become whole again.
Yeah, hope we see him.
Yeah, I hope so too. I mean, he's definitely super talented. I mean, we don't get a chance to see him play that much anymore, but Mendo has always been. There hasn't ever been a question with that, especially with like flex heroes and things like that. He's always been very versatile. So I mean, you'd think with these teams always talk about them having like mental health therapists, and just support for that. But I never hear about these guys like going on a regular basis. Like, therapy happens on a regular schedule, and it's supposed to build upon itself. But yet I don't ever hear that, like talking to Tyrone's great, but like, why wouldn't you, it'd be awesome if you actually talk to a professional, like sports psychologist or a therapist, and having that kind of like work through it. But I mean, it's not like I'm saying it's Mendo's fault. I'm just saying like, the support that you would want to see from some of these guys, like I maybe we're just not hearing about it, but I feel like you would, like you would hear at least some like, oh yeah, been working on this, and it's, feeling good, like I'm feeling like I'm my old self again, or I'm building back myself, or whatever. But we haven't heard much of that, so it kind of makes me wonder if if there truly is proper mental health support, with these teams. Next question we got here is, do you see the Outlaws missing final playoffs? Ooh, man,
they're on the bubble.
Yeah, unless they turn around, unless Jake like becomes super good at Tracer, you know, or at least if the map pool favors them, like really, like if the map pool for stage 4 is really, really good for them, then they might have a chance. But right now, I think that they could be outside. I would actually bet that they would be outside looking in.
I mean, it's also, even the map pool now should help them a lot, right? There's at least 3 Junkrat maps in the pool. So
true. That's a good point. I don't know.
Strange.
They've been kind of up and down, right? This stage right now. I mean, they could, if they win out the rest of, you know, they win out like the last, 3 games here, then, you know, they'll put themselves in a good position at least. You know, not for this stage, but at least for the overall grand picture. Okay, next thing, last one maybe. Okay, what is the overview schedule moving forward? How often will you guys do the podcast? So we just try to do it whenever we can. Like even this episode, we were trying to get together for like a week and a half now. So, you know, we're just busy. You know, ZP obviously couldn't even make this one because of
Andy is in a tough spot, casting contenders all the time. So
yeah, and I mean, I've been super busy lately too. So. Yeah, I can't really promise anything. Like I said, like, you know, we just said that we weren't going to do it every week. So maybe every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, I would think that would be a pretty normal frequency. We had to do one this week. It's just too much to go on, like too much to talk about. And if we didn't do one, it would have been like even more. We'd probably have to skip like a bunch of topics. We don't want to do that. But all right, guys, well, why don't we wrap up? Thanks for the questions, guys. You got questions for next week, go ahead and email those to theoverview@chanmanv.tv, and we'll read them out next week. But Yiska, thanks for joining us today and staying up. You know, I know it's like super early over there right now.
Oh my God, I can see the sun rising in the background.
That's true.
that's actually true. Yeah,
that's true. That's awesome. Yeah. Any shout outs you want to do before you take off, man?
No, I'm fine. Thanks for having me.
Okay, yeah, anytime, man. It's definitely great getting your insight there. FishStix, how about you?
Nothing really. Yeah. We'll try to do the
Easy.
show more often in the future, maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Anything to share for your possible future or anything?
Oh, yeah.
No. Okay.
Lot of conversations going right now.
Okay. All right. Cool.
I'd say there's like a 70% chance that I'll be working in something directly related to Overwatch.
Okay.
So we'll see.
Nice.
Good.
We'll see.
It's about time.
Yeah.
I'll round things out by thanking you guys. You know, thanks for everybody that's watching. I know, you know, obviously the matches are going on right now. It's not the ideal time for us to do the show, but better we do it and, you know, get the VOD out and get all the audios out than not doing it at all, right? So, you know, thanks for those that are hanging out in chat, asking us questions, and you can find the VODs obviously on youtube.com/ChanManV. As always, you can find the audios on iTunes and Google Play, and soundcloud.com/ChanManV. If you enjoy the show, leave a review, a 5-star review. It really helps out, and when people are looking for Overwatch podcasts too. But that's going to be it, guys, for this week. So for Yiska, FishStix, and myself, ChanManV, we'll see you next week, or maybe in a couple weeks.